Verity here from the creative team with another video for you today. Today's card features a speckled embossed background, and this really creates a soft, subtle detail to a background that doesn't take away from the main focus of your card. For today's card, I'm using the Verity stamp set, banner and wreath to create a spring-inspired congratulations card. I'm using the circle and the decorative banner along with a large variety of floral clusters and the birds. To start off, I'm placing the stamp inside my stamp positioner and using my anti-static tool on my cardstock in case I have any fingerprints on it. I'm using the Wow Clear Ultra Slow drying ink and stamping onto £80 Nina Solar White cardstock. Remember, Wow have gone to great lengths to try and remove and prevent static building up with your powders, so don't empty your powder into a plastic container and use a plastic spoon. It really undoes the work Wow have done. Unfortunately, I was guilty of doing this in the past when I first started heat embossing, and I do get more stray and powder sticking to my cardstock when I use those colours that have been decanted. So I've covered the circle in Primary Bluetiful and heat set this. So the Primary Bluetiful embossing powder is a beautiful pastel aqua with a lovely gloss to it when it is heat set. So I really love this colour. You could use a circle die to cut the stamp out, but it was just as quick to fussy cut such a simple shape than finding my dies and using my machine. I also cut out the middle part of my circle so my background could peek through later on. For the rest of the stamped images, I planned on colouring them with my polychromos pencils and would heat emboss the lines afterwards. For this, you need a stamp positioner to stamp all of the images in a pale ink and then be able to heat emboss them later on. The images were stamped on Faber-Castell sketchpad paper, which has some tooth to it, which is great for pencil colouring. Make sure you don't take your stamps off your stamp positioner yet. I used pumice stone distress oxide to stamp and used a selection of pinks and green pencils to colour the images in. I started off trying to be very neat and adding shading when I was colouring these images in, but these are small images and once heat embossed you won't see all that detail. So towards the end I became quicker and messier in my colouring. But when looking at the card you would never know which floral cluster was which at the end. For the banner and the birds, I just added a little shading with some greys and whites. I find the white pencil is great for blending colours together. I'm not going to show all the pencil colouring, but I'm going to put some music on just to show you some of the highlights. If you want to skip this bit, go to the 4:10 mark on the video to carry on with the rest of the card. Once all the images were coloured, I put it back into my stamp positioner, and as I hadn't moved the stamps off the window of my stamp positioner, I could stamp over the coloured images with my Wow Clear Ultra Slow drying ink to be able to heat emboss them. The paper I was using was quite textured, obviously for the colouring, so I stamped it several times for good coverage, and I did use my anti-static tool again as I'd handled the paper a lot, so in case any of my fingerprints were on the paper. I heat embossed all of the images in Wow Metallic Silver Superfine Embossing Powder, which is great for small stamps like this as it keeps all the detail. I haven't shown it on screen as this is one of the powders I still have in a plastic container that I decanted and as I say, I do notice I can get powder straying often, and I don't have the original container to put it back into. As you can see, the detail and the shine of this powder is stunning. For the speckled background, I'm using the Primary Bluetiful powder again. Just using a spatula, I picked up small amounts of the powder on and just tapped the spatula over the top of my paper. The powder fell randomly onto the panel, and the closer to the panel you are, the more concentrated the powder will be. As this has no ink or liquid for the powder to cling onto, you must heat set the powder using your heat gun underneath your card. If you use your heat gun on top of the card, it's just going to blow the powder off before it even gets a chance to get hot enough to melt. This was a tip I picked up from Marion when I was at the Birmingham Craft Show back in November, because of one of the display cards that she'd created was just stunning, and it had this kind of look to it. The sentiment was stamped onto the banner. Now, the sentiment doesn't come curved, so I adhered it to the window of my stamp positioner and kept on adjusting the ends until I was happy that it's positioned correctly within the banner. And then I heat embossed this to tie in with the background and the wreath. Next, I foam mounted the background onto my card panel using glue, so I had some wiggle room just in case it wasn't straight, which it often is with me. And all the stamped and coloured pieces were adhered to the card. Several of these pieces were adhered with some dimension using some foam pads. Now, I took such a long time fussing around with the layout of the wreath. Believe me, I cut out so much of the video. In the end, I tried to keep the flowers within 3 areas. As it appeals to the eye, if it forms more of a triangle, it helps lead it around the card. Again, I took so long deciding on what sequins would look best. In the end, I went for Soapy Bubbles Confetti Mix by Trinity Stamps, as these add a soft pink to go with the florals, but also it's got quite a clear colour to it as well, so it doesn't detract from the main focus of the card. I love how this card turned out. It may still be cold outside, but this card reminds me that spring's around the corner. It's not too far away. I just love spring colours. I think the silver pairs really well with the Primary Bluetiful embossing powder, as it really helps the Primary Bluetiful just pop out of the card. The subtle speckled embossing background also adds a soft interest to the card panel without detracting from the main focal point of the card, the floral wreath. This card would be perfect to give, say, for a wedding or for a new baby, as the colours are quite gender neutral, as both pinks and blues feature in it. If you've loved this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you will be notified when a new video is up. If you're interested in popping over to my YouTube channel, Pretty Little Button, I've put a link in the description below. Till next time, happy crafting!